Hey, my name's Ben Johnson. I'm the CTO of Obsidian, and I'm here today to talk to you about Oauth integrations and really what I'm calling them SaaS backdoors. This is a little bit more focused on healthcare, and just wanted to give you a quick few minutes introduction into what we're seeing out there. So if you're not familiar with SaaS backdoors, really what's happening is these SaaS platforms, think Microsoft 365, Salesforce, Google Workspace, ServiceNow, et cetera, they're really platforms and they have marketplaces and they're all about integrations and APIs, and that's fantastic. It's creating new workflows, it's enabling productivity that was never there before, but it's becoming a very pressing risk because it's typically a huge blind spot for the organization. So what we're seeing out there is that sprawl, this notion that you just continually add more and more of something, in this case, these SaaS integrations, is growing, and it's there. And it's, quite frankly, as I mentioned, invisible. And beyond that, what really starts to add more risk is that typically too much access is granted. Users just say, yep, whatever scopes, I'll give you the access, right? I think we've all seen that. And I think what typically also happens is it becomes this mirror of your organization. So your organization is probably trying to operate in a way that's very productive and empowering and giving people autonomy. A lot of great things there. But what typically happens then is people do have maybe the ability to integrate and onboard different clients and different things into these SaaS applications. And so that quickly increases the sprawl now that you have thousands of users with the ability to do this. And this isn't just your users. We are seeing adversaries out there in the wild utilize these apps basically as the new malware, right? They're trying to get users to install these integrations, which then no longer need to log in or have MFA or things like that, or potentially compromise existing integrations that have already been granted, usually overly permissive access. So what are we seeing actually more in the healthcare side? Well, the numbers aren't great. We're seeing on average 750 integrations in environments utilizing Microsoft 365. We're seeing 900 in Google Workspace environments, and we're seeing about 150 in Salesforce. Typically a lot. On average, what we see is 70% of those are inactive, meaning we haven't seen any activity for 90 days or so, which quite frankly just leads to that sort of lingering problem of tech debt, security debt. It's just there. Maybe people used to use it, but now no one's using this integration, or it never really was deployed properly. And when you look at what's happening in these environments, I don't think you'll be surprised when we say that it doesn't appear that there's typically a process for approving, reviewing, or ultimately maybe banning applications. It's just kind of unmanaged. And when we do look at Salesforce, you do tend to see permissions that are a bit higher, right? I mean, Salesforce in general, you see typically too many administrative users and things like that, ghost admins. But when it comes to the integrations, you do tend to see these integrated applications with a lot of access. And then, this isn't just a bunch of facts. In reality, things like auditors are starting to look for these because these applications have privileged access. They're essentially privileged users. Data is flowing between, different systems. So this isn't just about threats. It's also about, general risk and GRC and compliance. And as another example, we saw an environment that really tried to clean this up and basically get down to zero. Then once they essentially opened the floodgates again, their employee population enabled this to go back to 7,000 in 30 days, right? Some of these are just people, logging into some cloud-based application with their Microsoft or Google account, in this case, Google, but other times it's fully installing an application that has, Google Drive access, Gmail access, et cetera, maybe even access to everyone's Gmail, right? Those kinds of things. So really wanted to be careful there. And just to call out an example too, in the screenshot, see things like untitled projects that internal developers were building and trying to integrate and, again, create these amazing workflows. But again, it's not really a tight SDLC or, a managed process for how this is all going in your environment. So what can you do about it? Well, I threw the NIST cybersecurity framework up here because I think just like really any aspect of security, you have to essentially pick left or right, left a boom, right a boom. Are you going to focus more on prevention or more on monitoring and response? Well, we all know in reality, you need both. You really do need both. But first of all, I think you do need to start with inventory, which is, kind of like identify, right? You need to understand what is the state of your problem. I recommend then, or we recommend that you install monitoring so that you're keeping an eye and seeing how things are going. And if you are trying to clean up, are you actually making a dent, or is it, sort of not keeping up with new installs and that kind of thing? And then, we talked about the security approach, but, even if you can't prevent or get to an allow list posture, which we have seen organizations get to allow list postures and be quite happy with that. But you can typically ban certain applications. So maybe some game, or certainly if it's malicious or something like that, you'd want to ban it. But, there is the banning capabilities typically in these environments. And then you got to just figure out, how do I solve this problem in a more systematic way? So how do I implement some policy, some process? What is the process? This is similar to back in the day when everyone had full admin rights on laptops and desktops and could install any software they wanted. And it just really led to this kind of flourishing of malware. Fortunately, we're not quite there yet, but it feels similar where people can just install whatever they want. So we got to start, bringing it into a more, manageable risk level. And then, as you're thinking about all this, really keep an eye on those admins and those VIPs. So if someone has broad administrative access over all, let's say Gmail or Microsoft 365 Exchange, they install a integration. That's a huge amount of risk, because that integration maybe can read everyone's mailbox, or maybe it's someone with just their own access, but they're very significant, the CFO or something like that. Like, you really don't want strange applications having access to those environments. And then you gotta really hammer this home with your culture, with your training. So you gotta incorporate these kinds of risks with security training, or at least we recommend you do. And then start to figure out ways that work in your environment, maybe like a top 10 list of offenders, and you can gently say, hey, you're on the top 10 list. Maybe you need to remove some apps, or we're just going to go ahead and do it for you. So there's a lot to do, but really wanted to make sure that you're aware that these SaaS integrations are really becoming these SaaS backdoors, and lots of data can flow in and out. You can actually make calls to make changes and really manage environments through these apps. So there can be a lot of power for good or for bad. And really just hope you're keeping an eye and trying to figure out your approach to managing these SaaS backdoors. So thanks again, and really hope you learned something, and look forward to hopefully chatting with you at some point about this topic. Thank you.